Cruz right here on Live Now from Fox, going out to another live event right here. Senate Judiciary Subcommittee talking about restoring the Voting Rights Act. Let's listen right here.
The Corrupt Politicians Act were to pass, it would strike down every voter ID law in the country. Yep. Would that protect the right to vote?
No, it undermines it.
How does
it undermines confidence in the outcome of elections as well, which is also a problem. I mean, this is a lawyer's committee, so I'll use a court analogy. It is not enough that our justice system produce the highest degree of accurate outcomes possible and just outcomes. It must be understood and viewed to produce those outcomes so that America can have confidence in its justice system. The same is true of our election system. It not only needs to work correctly, by which we mean producing an accurate vote count of legally eligible voters, but it also needs to be clearly seen to do so by winners and losers so that we can have confidence in the outcome of our elections. I rattled off several, 2016, 18, and now a discussion following 20 in some places. It's worked on both sides, have had the concern. There have been good reasons for it over the years. And I would just say, you know, the reference to fraud, and since it's Texas, the current Attorney General of Texas, Senator, respectfully, spoke recently about 500 plus different voter fraud prosecutions in Texas. It isn't that it doesn't exist.
Well, how is that possible? Democrats tell us that voter fraud never occurs in any circumstance anywhere in the universe.
Well, and of course, it has, and Congress and the House reran an election in 2019 because of it. It goes both ways. That was Republican operative committing fraud in that race in North Carolina. So this is not singular, but protection of voting
well, and
seems
that race
to be
was
sacrificed.
Also ballot harvesting, was it not?
It was. Yeah, and absentee votes are particularly, and have always been known to be, particularly vulnerable to fraudulent tactics.
So 29 states prohibit ballot harvesting. The Corrupt Politicians Act that Senate Democrats are pushing would strike down every one of those laws. Would striking down the restrictions on ballot harvesting, would that protect the right to vote? Absolutely
not. It undermines both the right and the confidence in the outcome of elections. So it does double harm.
Well, we have also seen lots of overwrought rhetoric about the Texas election integrity law, about the Georgia election integrity law. Indeed, we had just a few minutes ago House Democrats from the Texas legislature who fled the state of Texas, who are not doing their jobs, who are hiding out here in Washington and engaged in a political stunt. What is interesting about the attacks on that legislation is they're strikingly missing specifics. So, for example, the Texas election integrity law that is being debated right now requires voter ID for mail-in ballots. Does that protect the right to vote?
Absolutely, and I would note that it equalizes the protection of in-person voting as well, something that's happening in other parts of the country with the growth of mail-in voting.
So the Texas law that's also being debated prohibits officials from mailing unrequested mail-in ballots, from just taking everyone on the rolls and mailing them all ballots, even if they didn't ask for one.
That's correct.
Is that a provision that protects the right to vote?
Absolutely, and I'll give you a Northeast example in Connecticut, where their Secretary of State mailed out ballots to everyone on the voter rolls, their outdated rolls, in the primary and general election, and hundreds of thousands of those 3.6 million, if I remember my numbers correctly, of those ballots were returned with the supposed voter not at that residence. That's an enormous error rate to just lob blank opportunities to participate at clearly ineligible residences and voters.
So the Texas law that's being debated right now also mandates cameras and live streaming inside central count and early vote ballot board meetings, and mandates signature verification proceedings, cameras in large counties. Does that protect the right to vote as well?
Having oversight by citizens definitely protects the right to vote. In my experience as an attorney general, when you provide that kind of transparency in a wide variety of circumstances, not just elections, you can talk about it in the sex offender registries. When they know they're being watched, they behave better. It's an excellent tactic.
Mr. Nobile, we have heard some overwrought rhetoric about the Supreme Court's decision in Brnovich, which was a 6-3 decision. It wasn't 5-4, it was 6-3. And we have heard Democrats on this committee suggesting that decision was outrageous, it was far too broad, it was contrary to law. Mr. Nobile, am I correct that the Biden Department of Justice filed a letter with the Supreme Court in Brnovich in which the Biden Department of Justice reviewed its prior brief in that case and said, and I quote, "The department has now concluded that, although it does not disagree with the conclusion in that brief, that neither Arizona measure violates Section 2's result test." So the Biden DOJ explicitly agreed that Arizona's law prohibiting ballot harvesting did not violate the Voting Rights Act. Is that right?
That's correct, Senator.
So explain to me how it is that Democrats are saying this is a horrible, radical, right-wing, crazy conclusion that upholding the Arizona law can't be done consistent with the Voting Rights Act. Is the Biden Department of Justice some crazy right-wing radical group?
Probably not, but time will tell.
I feel confident we can predict that they are not, and yet it seems the rhetoric we're getting from our Democratic colleagues does not match reality. Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent that the letter filed by the Biden Department of Justice in the Brnovich case explicitly agreeing that the Arizona laws should withstand scrutiny under the Voting Rights Act. I ask that that be entered into the record of this hearing.
Without objection.
Thank you.